Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I want to do something different. I generally have an idea of what I want to do when I'm doing a sound design tutorial, and I generally have the sound already ready. But for this time what I wanted to do is just jump into a project where I have a kick and some drums, or a kick, a bass and some drums prepared, and then just make some sounds on top of that. So I don't know how this is going to turn out right now, but I think it should be fairly interesting nonetheless. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. Alright, so this is what we have. I'll quickly play this part of this for you, and part of this as well, so you can kind of hear what kind of sounds we're dealing with. Here's the kick and bass alone. And then we'll have also some drums in there as well. So that's what we have, and we need to add some more synth sounds to that to make it more interesting. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of start off with a sound that we can just use at the start of maybe every 8 bars here. So we'll have it 4 times. So I'm going to pull up Serum for that. Lately I've been using Faceplant a lot more, but I'm not ready yet to kind of show that on tutorials. So I'll keep to stick with Serum for now, and then once I have a very deep understanding of the synth, I'll start including that as in my videos as well. So if you have been watching my streams, which I definitely recommend, you might have already seen it. But in the videos I'm still not going to use it until I really understand what's going on. Alright, so let's talk a little bit about what I've done here. I've done a basic FM setup where we have a sine wave and just any kind of a very harmonic waveform here, and then just set an FM amount and choose a position. You can see this very harmonic by looking at, you know, the harmonics in here. You can see we have a lot of them. It doesn't roll off like right here. So it's all the way from the low end to the very high end. There is some stuff in there, which is going to give us a very nice sound in general, because then the FM is going to be fairly extreme and we can filter out a little bit more. So let's hear our basic tone here. Could be a little bit more extreme, so let's add an effect to this, maybe the sync. Something like that, and now we'll just bandpass filter it like this. Maybe like that, so we can turn it up a bit more. Something like that. So now let's add a hyper distortion here for some stereo width. It sounds very nice. We can compress it. Let's do that before it here. We can take out the low end, which you don't need because we have our bass already in there. Now we can add some effects to this, and we can start preparing a little arrangement with this sound here. So I'll add a delay. I'll add a little bit of reverb as well. Let's add a macro so we can use that. And I'm playing this in this sub-bass register. So if you're wondering how to get that kind of metallic dark texture, you can see we're playing the sub-bass register here. And now with the macro, we can just set down a pattern like this, very simple. We'll have to make sure that the macro resets every time, otherwise it's not going to give us that click that we want. So we'll also add this last bit here so that it loops nicely. And now we can do some processing to make it sound a little bit better. So let's add multiband dynamics to this. Obviously it's way too loud right now, so we'll mix it in a little bit. Before we mix it in, we want to gain stage it, so that's what this limiter here is for. Basically we're driving it into this limiter until it starts to limit very hard, and then we can turn down the volume overall. So let's start with setting this to like -12 here. Okay, so now that we have that, we can make it a little bit more interesting with maybe a chorus before that. Nice, and now we can add, let's add a stereo processor to this to get the stereo width that we want. Now what I do here, the way I use the stereo processor is that all of these are relative to each other, so the width relative to all the other elements here, and then the overall width obviously up here is controlling the overall width. I generally don't want to make like things very wide in the bass, so I'll always turn the bass down even if I want the bass to be wider. That just means that I have to turn this up by more percent than what I'm turning it down by. I think that's okay. Now what I like to do is have a second macro here, which you can set to that as well. So that's going to be the modulation amount, and we'll use that like this. And we have some weird high end in here. Maybe that's the multiband. I think that's both multibands combined. Yeah, now we have a cleaner sound. So let's not use the multibands then, but instead drive it a little bit harder into the filter with, for example, the exciter here. So that's the first sound that we have, and that's just kind of there to set every 8 bars. So now we can make some transitioning effects, those kind of things. So let's start with maybe like an ARP sound that we can just play throughout the whole drop here. So I'll start with a rhythm here. Now the key of this track is G sharp, if you have noticed already. So that's what we'll use here. So we'll make a very basic pattern like this maybe. Let's put down serum again. And we'll make a melody. Something like this. This is going to be our lead melody, and then we'll duplicate it. And what I like to do here, once we add the extra drums to give it a bit more power, is to just take our root key and play it 1 octave lower in all these spots where we have emptiness here. So something like this. Very common technique. So now we can make our synth sound here. Let's go with some acid sounds. So we'll set the filter up to make an acid sound, which is just a fairly resonant low pass filter. So something like that, and we'll turn it up like this. Now we can make it maybe a little bit longer in the release timing for both of these. Okay, let's use the macro to set up our filtering here. So this is going to go up, and then we'll probably do it like this. Very simple filter, sweep going up and down. Here we also need to add our effects, so we're going to add another echo here for some nice delay. Alright, let's add some more stereo processing to this as well, and then this sound should also be finished. So again, I'm just doing this relative and kind of quickly as well. And then we'll set the overall width here. Can make it a bit more exciting. Now what I don't want is I wanted to instantly have a lot of high end here when we kick it in, so we'll put a low pass filter on this. Going up like this. Now let's add another transition here somewhere. So we'll make something here. I want kind of a sweep going into this second, fourth bar here. So again, we'll open up Serum for that. And I'm thinking a very simple kind of squelched sound. So that's just a bandpass on a saw wave. So let's set it up like this with a macro to there. That should do, probably. Let's listen to what that sounds like. Nice. We can play that. And then set it up like this. Let's get, again, a little bit of ambience in there. We'll make the feedback very long for this one. So it rings out nicely over this whole time. High pass it. And I don't think we need a reverb on this one. Let's first gain stage it. As you can see, we need a limiter here. Okay, that's good enough. I'm going to turn the feedback down a little bit, because now that it's so loud, you can hear that it's a bit too long. So now we can set this to a reasonable volume, like -13 here. And then to change it up, you can take this and just move them around like this and have the sound go down instead. If you want, you can even put this here as well. Okay, so now again we need to do our stereo processing here. Now we don't have any way of generating stereo in this patch yet, so if we just throw on our stereo processor right here, what you'll see what happens is that it's not going to do anything. So if I set this up to 200, it's still going to be mono. So we need a way to generate stereo before we actually go into stereo processor. And I have two ways of doing that. We have the stereo generator, which is a noise-based plugin. And then there is stereo spread here, which is comb filter based. So we'll just try both of them and see which one works the best. And what I like to do is just set up very extreme settings to see what kind of tone it creates. So we'll do that, high bands here and a lot of spread. You can hear it has a little bit of a clicky dazery sound to it. Whereas if we use the stereo generator instead and set the wet up to all the way, you can hear it as a bit noisy, reverby kind of sound, almost like a dimension expander. So let's see which one I like the most by listen. I think I'll go with the stereo generator. I like that one more because the high end is a little bit crispier. So now we can set up our stereo width here, excite the high end a little bit more. It's starting to become something of an idea. So now what we want is to add a few more effects to it so that the idea kind of flows well. Generally what I do is just use samples for that. So one pack that I've been using a lot is Psychedelic Intelligence #2, where they have sound effects here. We have a whole bunch of different cool riser sounds like these ones. Something like that, we can just throw it in there and make sure that it's warped nicely. So we'll set it to 140 like that. And then we have to specify Complex Pro for these kind of things, because beats mode tend to be breaking them a lot. And we'll turn this down to like minus 20, I think. See what that does. We have a crash sound in here, and obviously it's layered with this sound here, but it could use a little bit more power. So one thing we can do is turn this sound down a little bit, and something I've kind of been forgetting here is sidechaining. So we can set up a sidechain here. We'll do it fairly lightly because this is one of the key elements of our track right here. So we'll just set up a very light sidechaining here. If you haven't seen my video on sidechaining and how I do it, definitely go take a look. But we'll set up very light settings for this one with a very high threshold So the threshold is very much up here instead of, you know, very low where you normally put it with a sidechain. So this is what I'm going to use on my main elements. So we'll put it there, there, and here also. And for something like this effect sound, we can remove these because we don't need that. That's default track stuff. I'll probably just turn it down like this, so it's a little bit more extreme on here. So now we have that, and we can start adding more effect sounds to this as well. I talked about this crash, how we have it there, and we can make it a little bit more forceful as well by just adding a downlifter to it. So the ones that I use for that is the Sounds of Kashmir, going to the effects, white noise, exhaust, and then it's this one, the number 6, which is 3.6 or 3.5 megabytes. So that's nice and long. And what I'd like to do for this one is delete the utility, use this to kind of remove all the lower ends in there, and then use an auto filter here with a high resonance on bandpass mode, just to go from like 15k down like this. Let's turn that down by a lot. Let's set it to -35 so it's very light. Okay, what I like to do is freeze this. So we'll do that. And we can flatten it, and what then you can then do is just make a new audio track where you put some of these on for a reverse kind of sweep effect. So we'll remove the last bit there. Obviously set this to -35 as well. Maybe we want a bit more than just that. So now you have a nice sweep that you can use in transitions as well. We can put it here as well. Lower. Another thing I want to do is add an element right here. Something I like to do is add a very light element on top of everything. So the sounds that we have so far are fairly aggressive. So instead what we'll do is a very light sound. For example, one that I like is just a sine wave with some reverb on it. So we'll play a few kind of pseudo-random notes in the key here. This F should be an E if I remember correctly. We're in the key of minor, so we'll go up back to G sharp, 1 octave higher. Something like that. And then we just put some reverb on it. Let's use Ableton's own reverb. And just set it very high. Very. Something like that. Kind of gives you that nice room sound, but it's very short. You know, with some more delay on that. There's a little bit of high-end noise there. Let's filter it out like that. Okay, and if we want, we can add another reverb on that again, which acts a little bit more like a standard reverb. And then of course we'll add our sidechaining. Again, we'll turn down the threshold lower so that the sidechaining is stronger. And we can set this to -16 maybe. It's very lightly there, but it adds just a little bit of character that is kind of like ear candy. So it's nice to hear that. Next thing what I would like to do is add maybe some more effects going into the end here of the drop. So we'll do another different kind of rising effect like we have here. So we'll go back to that same pack that we had before. Maybe this one. It might work nicely for the end of the drop. Yeah, that seems to work. I'll set this to -25 because there's not a lot of stuff happening here, so there isn't a lot of stuff to mask it, so you generally don't want it to be as loud. I believe this is, yeah, it's a little bit louder. Maybe we need to go even lower, like -30 here. Here we can also do something else, which is just add a little high pass to the end here, which also helps with the rising effect here. So that's nice. There's not a lot more stuff that I want to add here. Obviously you can continue as much as you want. You could add another lead element here and there, but I hope you kind of get the point of how I go about making these lead sounds and sound designing kind of on the spot. I think this would be interesting, kind of a video like this, where I just sit down and kind of do some stuff from scratch without having a pre-planned, plan of action. So if you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you have any suggestions for what you would like to see next, leave them in the comments down below, or join my Discord server and put them in tutorial requests. But that's going to be it for today. So if you're new here, subscribe. And again, if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like. And I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.